Welcome to the Biz Bash podcast, where we make biz strategy a piece of cake. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Cami, but you might know us better as Eliza Ann Calligraphy and Cami Monet. We want to help you, our fellow stationers, artists, and calligraphers, confidently build a profitable and personality-driven creative biz.
We're here to share our honest-to-goodness advice and actionable strategies for ambitious artists.
So put on your party hat, quit being a procrastinator gator, and let's get this party started. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Biz Bash podcast. Today is so exciting. We have Meg from Belle & Union joining us to talk about how to start your own product-based business and give us some best practices when it comes to running a product-based business. So Meg is the creator of Belle & Union. They have the cutest stuff, you guys. Art prints, greeting cards, tea towels. They're all American made, a little sweet, a little sassy. I've always admired her and her creative style because it has a little bit of Southern flair, and y'all know I'm all about that. So without further ado, Meg, welcome to the Biz Bash podcast.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
Of course. So Meg, I know I briefly introduced you, but can you just tell us a little bit more about Belle & Union and why you started it?
Sure thing. So I studied graphic design in college. Absolutely loved that. I changed schools 3 times, but my major always stayed the same. So I'm a little bit of an oddball. But I kind of realized later in my school career that I didn't really want to do corporate design. That just didn't sound fulfilling to me, working in a cubicle for some advertising giant. Who knows? I don't know, but it wasn't for me. Ironically, I did end up graduating and going and working at an agency for 6 months. And that was about as long as that lasted. But I was doing wedding invitations on the side, as I think every graphic designer ever does, just as a way to maintain our sanity a little bit. And so I got to a point where I was working 40 plus hours a week, really, at this ad agency that was over an hour away from where I live. So I had a long commute at a place I didn't love. And then I would come home and do these wedding invitations. And that got to be a full-time gig. And finally, my husband was like, you know what? Enough's enough. You got to pick one or the other. And I had always wanted to kind of have this, well, I don't say always, but I wanted to have a product-based business. It was kind of in the back of my mind. I had worked at a little boutique in Savannah, Georgia in college. And that's really where I found Letterpress. And to me, this idea that you could make something and someone would buy it was completely revolutionary. It was amazing. So my boss actually took me to the National Stationery Show with her on a buying trip in 2009. And it was like my eyes were open to this whole world that I didn't know existed. I mean, here were all these happy little people selling their stuff and making a living out of it. And it was absolutely incredible. And I knew I wanted to have a part of that. I didn't end up launching my own collection until 3 years later at the Stationery Show. So for us, we went straight from absolutely nothing to wholesaling a line, which is a little unconventional, I would say, for most product-based businesses. A lot of people will kind of dip their toes in the water through like an Etsy shop or retail markets, that sort of thing. I guess I'm more of a go big or go home kind of girl, because literally we just dove right into that wholesale world.
Oh my gosh.
It was a little nuts. Like looking back at the time, I thought was like, this is the only way to do this. But now I'm like, goodness gracious, child. Like, what were you thinking? But it worked out. I wanted to go to that show and just walk away with one order. That was literally my big goal. And we walked away with over 50, and it was absolutely incredible till I got home and realized how much money I had to spend to actually make all that product. another issue. But yeah, that's literally what started Belle & Union, was that first big wholesale launch.
That's really incredible. And I have to say, like, I relate to your story a lot. And Cami knows a little bit about this, but I've had like an idea in my back pocket for a while of like something like product based. And I feel like my approach is very much like the way you dealt with it, was like going head on into it first. I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to wholesale and like do the thing like while I'm at it. So I guess that's encouraging to me that if you wanted to take that step, you could, but it's also good for people to hear that like you feel like what you did was on a certain level of insanity and that maybe you wouldn't do it that way again.
I think everybody in the product-based space has some level of insanity. That's just part of the business.
And I wanted to like jump back too. You had said that you worked in a boutique in Savannah, Georgia. Is it still there by any chance?
Sadly, it is not. The recession was really hard on kind of gift shops, especially in tourist-based towns like Savannah is. So the store closed in February of 2010, I believe. So not even a year after I went to the show with her.
Okay. Savannah the reason I'm asking is because Savannah has a very dear place in Cammie and I's hearts, because that's where we actually like met up and hung out for the first time. So I was curious if we would have like walked through it, but obviously not.
What store was it? I'm curious now.
We didn't meet at a store. We just met up in Savannah. That was like our meeting point for the first time, since she's from Atlanta and I'm in Orlando. So that was like our halfway point. So we love Savannah.
It's always going to have a soft place in my heart. I mean, it's where I went to school. Well, where I finished school, I should probably say, where I met my husband and where I started this business. So Savannah's definitely got a soft spot for me too.
I love it. So following along how you dove straight into wholesale. So I know a lot of your products are letterpress. Did you start off with knowing letterpress skills and just being able to dive right into production and getting those created yourself? Or did you outsource that at the time when you first started?
Is neither an option?
Yes, that's always an option.
So I had like 3 rules I had placed on myself before I could start this business. And one of them was having my own letterpress. And the other was, I don't even remember the other 2. Doesn't matter. Really having the letterpress was the main thing, because I knew in order to make the margins work, which is a huge part of product-based businesses, I needed to be able to print myself. Because by me handling that labor cost, it was going to make it much more of a possibility to actually sell these things. Because as wonderful as greeting cards are, the margins on them are teeny, teeny, tiny. Yes. So I needed literally every penny I could, which for me meant, all right, you're doing the labor yourself. I had 0 experience with letterpress. They did not teach it at my college, even though it's a huge art school and they have printmaking or whatever. They didn't have letterpress. So my only experience with letterpress up until that point was literally just feeling the cards that we had in this boutique that I worked in. But we came across a little baby tabletop letterpress in an antique mall in Florida, actually. And it's the most bizarre antique mall. It's in Lake City. So if you're ever there, you have to go visit. It's like a grocery store of antique malls, if that makes any sense. So rather than like all these individual vendors having their own booth, it's like a booth of all the same stuff. So there'll be like the blue bottle booth and then the doll head booth. And like, it's the weirdest place. But there was a letterpress there. I had no idea if it worked, if it had all of its pieces and parts. But I would not leave it to go tell the lady at the cash register that it was mine. But literally it was like, you know what? I found it. This is a sign. I'm going home with it. It was, I think, marked on the tag for like $400 or something, which I would have gladly paid. That's still a great price for a press. But then the whole booth was marked 50% off. So I scored a letterpress for $200.
Gosh.
So totally meant to be. But I had no idea what I was doing. Like, legitimately. I just knew I loved the result you got when you printed letterpress. So I figured I'd love the process. And it was true. So I'm mostly a self-taught printer. I did take a couple of, like, air quoting the word, lessons from a local professor. But it was kind of funny because he would tell me how to do something and I'd be like, well, what if I did it like this instead? And he'd say, well, yeah, I guess that'll work too. So pretty much I just kind of made my own path, which is great. I mean, I think that's how a lot of things are. I'm fortunate in that my husband was a mechanic in the U.S. Army at the time. So if I couldn't figure it out, generally speaking, he could. But yeah, we taught ourselves and here we are 7.5 years later, still trucking along.
That's incredible, though. I mean, you're right. Like, to walk away with a press for $200. I can't believe that. It's like nuts. And also super exciting and clearly meant to be. I want to ask too, like, where did the name Belle and Union come from? Because we really like how hearing how people pick their names, because so many people who listen to this podcast are kind of in the starting stages of a business, and people like struggle with that a lot. So we'd love to hear your story for where that comes from.
So naming the business was actually a huge struggle for me. At the time, I had my wedding invitation business, which was under the name Low Country Press, which I still love and is dear to my heart. But the Low Country, as you guys probably know, that's the area like around Savannah and Charleston. Mm-hmm. So I knew that if I ever left the Low Country, people would see the name of my business and probably go, okay, what the heck is that? And I didn't want that. I wanted to have just, this standalone name. So I kind of went through lots of things. I'm a big list maker, and I liked the idea of the name kind of combining myself and my husband, because he was kind of this maybe not so silent partner at the time, since he was learning printing right alongside me, and he had the mechanic skills, whereas I'm obviously the creative. So it was kind of like these two sides of something that came together to form something bigger. And I loved that concept. He's originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up mostly around Texas. So it was kind of this idea of like a Southern belle and her Northern gentleman. But Belle and Yankee just sounded funny and kind of mean. So we ended up settling on Belle and Union, which I loved the double meaning of the word union, because yes, it's representative of, the northern states, but also it was a union in the two of us in our marriage.
That is so precious. I really love it.
Yeah, the name of your business is something that initially drew me to your brand. So like you totally nailed it. And I love the story behind it. I think it's amazing. And it really does represent your brand so well with the products you create. So it's just one of those things I always look up to when naming a business. You always find the people who hit it out of the park, and you are one of those for me, Meg.
Thank you. I'm very flattered.
Yeah, it's a great name. So that's really cool. So I'm assuming if you started off with a national stationery show, you probably started with greeting cards first, or what were the type of products you guys were interested in promoting first?
Definitely cards were a huge part of it. Again, from that margins perspective, it was something I could produce myself, which was kind of key for me. Again, know your numbers. That's a huge thing in any product-based business. So margins came first. The original collection had 32 letterpress greeting cards in it, which I think generally speaking, when you're launching a product-based business, it's really smart to have at a minimum 48 to 60 SKUs across the board. And the reason for that is when someone's trying to place a wholesale order with you, you need to provide them with enough variety that they can put together this wholesale order and not feel like they're having to buy everything from you to meet your minimum. Because, who really wants to do that? Very rarely are we going to look at something and say, yes, I want all of this. So you want to make sure you're kind of putting yourself in the shopkeeper's shoes and say, okay, do I have enough variety that they can, pick maybe only 25% of the lines, still hit my minimums, and be happy? So we had 32 cards. We did, a couple of notepads, some recipe cards. I ended up kind of finding myself in this foodie niche a little bit. So I kind of focused a little bit on the kitchen. And literally the month before I went to the show, I randomly decided I wanted to do tea towels, which was kind of insane. And at the time, nobody in the kind of stationery space was really doing that. Now I think pretty much everybody has tea towels, but back then nobody did. So when I launched with this very wide variety collection, everything from cards to towels, gift wrap, all that stuff, it made it really desirable for shop owners. One, it didn't look like it was my first rodeo, so to speak, but two, they were able to purchase across a variety of disciplines to fill their shops. So I think that was one of the reasons we were so successful from the beginning, is just because we kind of thought about having that wide array for people to choose from.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot of different product offerings and a lot of depth. Are you adding different products every year, or how does that process work now that you're more established?
It just depends on kind of what we're seeing in terms of sales trends. It's an ever ebbing and flowing process, I would say. we've certainly added a lot of categories within the last few years. In 2015 alone, so I guess that was my third year in business, we decided to really hit the kitchen space hard. And so we brought in everything from hand-carved utensils to cake toppers. I mean, that was a huge launch for me. It was also the best year I ever had at a show. So there's probably something there.
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny. The more that time has gone on, I've actually kind of started going the other way. Mm-hmm. And I'm being really focused on, okay, what categories are really working for us? What aren't? As much as I love them, do I need to let them go? So I think part of having, a product line is curating it yourself. And if it's time to cut something, you've got to be willing to do that. So that's really something I've actually been dealing with a lot in the last year, is taking a really hard look at everything we're doing and saying, okay, it's time to move on from you.
Yeah. What are your requirements for when you decide to, cut a product and keep your line lean and strong? I think Katie Hunt always, from Proof to Product, always says you're only as strong as your weakest product, or how is that? Yeah. What is your process like for when you're like, okay, this one's got to go? Because it's so hard to let go of something you've made.
It's awful. It's definitely the worst feeling. They're your babies.
Yeah.
Like, I want to keep every single thing ever. But for us, we start with the sales data. Pull the personal side of it completely out of it, because at the end of the day, this is a business and you've got to treat it like that as much as these businesses are our babies and these products are our babies. So we always look at the sales data, and it's usually pretty clear. With cards, we'll generally set some sort of threshold, like, okay, if we didn't sell 100 cards of this particular style, it's going to get cut, for whatever the time frame is. So we'll put very logical, data-driven parameters on things. And then we'll kind of go back through and say, okay, maybe this didn't sell that many, but why? What's the reason? And it may be because it's a sympathy card. But you know what? Those are a slower sell in general, but it's still kind of good to have in your collection. So, I mean, there's definitely still this trust your gut instinct about it. But we definitely always start with the data and then kind of work our way through our personal emotions from there. So I actually just went through this summer with our entire greeting card line, because we are at over 150 cards, I think, right now. And that's a lot. It's probably too much for most shops to try to dig through. But I've also been kind of going through this crazy rebrand thing. So I just was a little bit relentless. And we've actually cut the line down to between 48 and 60 cards. Oh, so wow. We're talking more than half. Yeah, it's kind of insane a little bit. But it's something that I felt like we needed to do.
Yeah.
So but where does just yeah. Because now I have all these questions, because if you have that inventory, and I'm assuming you don't stock like a ton of them, but you have some of them on hand. So what have you guys decided to do with those remaining ones? Do you put them in like sale packs? Do you take them with shows and do, and sell them for less? Or is it kind of like a big clean out?
So generally speaking, if something's not selling very well, we're not going to have a ton of inventory of it anyway, just because I'm not going to be reprinting it as often.
Okay.
So it kind of naturally whittles itself down. And usually anyway, when we get to where it's time to reprint something, it's like, okay, are we honestly going to reprint this or not? Is it even worth it? So a lot of this stuff was already pretty low, but now that I have a brick and mortar, we have additional opportunities that we wouldn't have had before. So in June, we actually had a sidewalk sale, and literally I just took all these cards that I knew I was discontinuing, put them in all these baskets on a giant 10-foot table, and I marked them all, I think, for like $2 or something. So huge discount at retail for my customers here locally, but it allowed me to push through a ton of inventory that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I just bought a ton of greeting cards from Antiquaria, actually, because I think they're doing something similar where they sold like packs of them for a lot less. And I've definitely grabbed a ton of them. Like I would have been that person in the store, like probably taking like 20, 30 of those, like easily.
We had to change the way that like we ring up cards in the store because like literally people would be bringing like armfuls worth of cards. So I wasn't going to sit there and like individually scan in each card.
Right.
So we like created a separate like product SKU in our little system, and it was just like sidewalk sale greeting card and had the price. So we had to like count everything beforehand and then count it after. So it probably wasn't like the most efficient system, but there was no way I was going to sit there and scan all those individual cards.
Right. So how long do you think it takes in terms of like brainstorming new products? So we've talked about like getting rid of some of those old ones, you know, that aren't selling well or you don't want them anymore. But what goes into really brainstorming and launching a new product? Like from point A to point Z, from that initial idea to like the production idea. Let's just say for a greeting card, because I know you do a ton of products. What kind of goes into that in terms of like timeline for your team?
I think this is always such a hard thing. Once I have the initial idea, it goes pretty fast.
Okay.
But getting that initial idea could take hours, days, weeks, months, you name it.
Yeah.
So I've been working on actually building a couple of new greeting card lines right now. And they've literally been stewing in my brain for, I don't know, probably a year. But I've never really put pen to paper. They're just like floating up in the vast expanse of my brain. So now though, I'm like really starting to kind of put my nose to the grindstone kind of thing. And I just ordered some of the designs. Like I made the designs last week, got them digitized, got plates made, and was so excited to see them like already printed them. So like that happened within a week. So, I mean, it can happen really fast once I have the idea, but getting the idea part is who knows what timeline I'm dealing with.
Yeah, I just have a rolling page of ideas in my notes on my phone. I just like, or I'm always emailing stuff to myself. So eventually, one day, they're all going to come out. It's going to be great. But for something like that requires a little bit more on the manufacturer side, like your tea towels, I know you worked really hard to get those all made in America instead of in China. Coming up with a new product that might require a different kind of manufacturing. How does that process work? How are you finding those manufacturers and working through that?
So that's a little bit different. I've found that there is an end to Google, which is really hard to believe, but it's true. So generally what will happen is I'll kind of get a wild hair idea like, oh, I want to make something ceramic. I don't know what it is yet, but I just want to do something ceramic. And so that'll kind of push me down this road of like, okay, let's find a ceramicist we can work with because I'm not going to learn how to do that. I have stuff on my plate. As fun as that would be. So before I even start really putting pen to paper on something that I'm going to outsource, I find who's going to do it first, which is a little difficult to be able to go to somebody and say, hey, I have kind of an idea, not really, but can you do it? But I mean, that's the truth of the matter, because the other thing with domestic production that you really have to be careful of is just the cost. It is going to cost you so much more to produce things domestically than it is overseas. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. But for us, we have to make sure that we can produce this thing domestically and still have good margins to be able to wholesale it and retail it. So there's a lot of things that I would absolutely love to do, but it's just not realistic for domestic production. So unfortunately, I can't. So with the ceramics, for example, like we found a guy that can do what we needed and his pricing seemed to be like we could make it work. So once we kind of got the green light there, then we're like, okay, let's go more into that product ideation. So the first thing we did with him was a salt and pepper shaker set. So I had this little drawing of a truck and a camper, and I was like, okay, I'm clearly a two-dimensional artist, but can you take this cute little drawing I have and make these 3D? And he did. So it was definitely a collaboration between the two of us in terms of getting those from 2D drawing to 3D product. But our pricing still worked. The crazy thing about ceramics is there's several steps in the process before you have even your first piece, like your sample piece. You have to go through like 3 different production molds and master molds and all this stuff. So you can have several $1,000s invested into the process of ceramics before you even hold your first sample. So you have to really be committed to going down that road and making sure, okay, I have to sell, 200 salt and pepper shaker sets before I even break even on all the money that we've spent. So you just have to really know those numbers and make sure it's realistic for the types of sales that you generally do.
Oh my gosh, that makes me so stressed out and so excited at the same time, because it's so cool to see something come to life that you created in another category, essentially, and then so stressful to have all that money invested and not knowing if it's going to sell. But I love it. I love that you just take the leap with it. And along those lines, do you do product testing with your customers to say like, hey, do you guys want salt and pepper shakers? Or are you just like, nope, I know what I want to do and I'm going to do it?
I'm a little bit more of a brat and I tend to just do what I want to do. But I'm trying to get better.
Two of a kind, Meg.
I'm trying to get better about it and really trusting what my customers are telling me, but also trusting my instincts. Because if you think about it, I think it was Henry Ford that said, if I asked the people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of how I feel about things. It's like people don't entirely know what they want. And since I am very much in the stationery space, you're talking about paper, like most people could care less, but when they see it, they love it. So I just try to trust my instincts. But having the store, I think, has also helped a lot because it's allowing me that one-on-one instantaneous feedback with a customer. Whereas before I was kind of this, behind the scenes person because the store owners were my middlemen between me and the customer. So it's definitely been a bit of an eye-opening experience kind of being on the other side of things, but in the best way.
So is your store also your studio, or are those spaces separate?
They are all in one. So I pay a lovely giant retail price tag on my wholesale space.
Oh, so is that also where you're storing all of your inventory as well? Or do you have a separate like warehouse or storage unit for additional things?
Nope. Everything is right here. If you guys could see behind me right now, there's like shelves and shelves for what feels like miles full of inventory. But no, one of the things that I wanted when I opened the store was to be able to have everything under one roof. Because before we were in this space, I had my garage studio, which was a 2-bay garage, but then I had kind of taken over the 3rd bay with a press that we weren't using. And then I took over the laundry room. And then I had a storage unit, and then I had a second storage unit. So I wanted everything under one roof. And while I'm technically paying more for it, it's just easier for me to have everything in one place. And from a staffing perspective, it works out really well too, because I can have my retail sales associates, in their downtime sleeving greeting cards. So I'm not having to pay 2 different people to do the same job, essentially. It's all in one.
No, I think that's great. That's how I would want it too. If I had a retail store, I'd want it all in one just for the sake of convenience. And it'd be so nice to have that. So how many people do you have working on your team?
So right now it's me who has, more than full-time hours, but I don't get paid anything for it. And then I have a full-time shop manager. She is my right-hand gal right now in terms of the retail space. So she actually came to me from a very corporate background. She was a, manager at Anthropology and Restoration Hardware and Williams-Sonoma, like all these huge places that I super admired. Was like, cool, okay, can you come transform my thing? Thanks. But it's been a really great partnership because she's got this strong retail background from a corporate perspective, and I am not that in any way, shape, or form. So it's been a really great balance. But she handles everything kind of shop related in terms of scheduling and personnel management and training, all that good stuff. So we love her dearly. I've got 3 very part-time, we call them brand associates, but basically, shop girls that help our customers. They do that packaging I was talking about from the wholesale side. That's kind of it as far as my on the ground team, I would say, here in San Antonio. My mom is actually our operations manager. So she does all of the financial paperwork, nasty stuff that I have zero interest in doing whatsoever. But for some bizarre reason, she enjoys. So she does that, though it's mostly a remote position. She'll come to San Antonio maybe once a month or so. And then I have 2 contract employees, one that handles like our PR and kind of press relation. Well, I guess that's exactly what PR stands for. All that like press stuff. She handles all that. Or if like we have a big event, she kind of helps with logistics for that. So like we did a big press party before we opened the store, and she kind of spearheaded all of that. And then I also have help with social media management and photography. So I guess there's like math really.
So we're really bad at doing math on air.
So, it's less than 10 people, but most are all part-time in some capacity, whether they're on site or not. Full-time wise, pretty much you're just looking at me and my shop manager.
No, that's awesome. Sounds like you have a great team, and your husband works for you guys too, right? Is he? Or is he kind of in and out? I wasn't sure if he's just doing the mechanics on the letterpress or what.
I joke that he retired a couple years ago. So he did 6 years in the military. He got out, went back to school, did the school thing for 4 years. So while he was in school, he worked for me, which was helpful because then I didn't have to hire outside people, and it saved me payroll, that kind of thing. So he worked for me either doing printing, mostly just the printing. He really didn't want to do anything else like sleeving cards or whatever. But once he graduated and got his dream job, we joke that he retired. So now he only works, I don't even know that I'd use the word works, but he'll come in and teach, like we do a letterpress workshop where we actually have students take a class and learn how to use the machine and print their own stationery. So he'll teach that with me. But beyond that, other than like just general handyman stuff, he's pretty behind the scenes as far as the business goes.
Yeah, I gotcha. So I know obviously you're super passionate about producing everything domestically. Can you tell us the reasoning behind this and why you chose this path for your business when it obviously is a more rocky one and harder to get those margins where you want them to be?
It's actually because of my husband. So great segue there.
Perfect. So you can do that.
Yeah, perfect. So he spent 6 years in the military, like I mentioned. And for me, I'm, this new bride with this teeny tiny baby business, and I'm watching these soldiers leave their families, leave their homes to go overseas to a country that they probably can't even find on a map, and literally fight for our freedom and that we have here at home. And it didn't sit right with me that it's like, okay, cool. You go like literally give up your life. I'm going to go make some stuff in China and sell it here. But thanks. I don't know. It sounds weird, but it just didn't sit right with me. So for me, I wanted a way to kind of honor and respect our soldiers' sacrifices for this ability for me to live my American dream. Like I can't do what I do if it wasn't for them doing what they do. So for me, producing everything domestically is just kind of my way of saying thank you in my own weird way. But it's been a really neat experience, as challenging as it's been. But knowing that I'm in some teeny tiny way helping the American economy by providing jobs and doing that sort of thing. Obviously I'm not an Amazon or whatever, but I'm still, every single person that I can give money to is a small business here in the States. And that's really fulfilling for me because that's really what's going to drive our industry and our economy. So it was just really important to me just to be able to say thank you and play my little part.
I feel like there should be red, white, and blue fireworks like exploding as you answer that question, like an eagle like soars over right now. Oh, but that was awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. I love that. I love that approach you have to that, and it is cool. We are, helping to create that American dream, not just for our business, but for someone else's. So that's really cool how you approach it like that.
it's definitely a challenge. I'm not going to lie. I mean, domestic production is not an easy thing. Like you mentioned our tea towels earlier. I spent almost a year literally creating my own supply chain to get those made, which anybody that's kind of tried to get anything made, supply chain management can literally be a full-time job and then some. So at the very first year we got started doing those, I literally had to like get in touch with farmers to say, hey, I need some of your cotton, because
gosh,
I know it's insane. But because believe it or not, the Chinese and Indian countries are actually buying a lot of the domestically produced cotton and then sending it overseas and producing stuff there. So we've got the raw goods, but they're the ones actually making it. So it's kind of funny that you can have something made from American cotton, but it's made in China. But that's pretty common. So we had to literally like reserve our cotton so we could have it sent to an American mill, which there are like, I don't know, 6 mills left in the entire country. There's just no textile industry anymore. And if you can actually find them, which is next to impossible, it felt like, they would be very laser focused in what they do. So like there would be the denim factory or the wool factory. So you had to like actually find the right guy and then beg that he would actually work with you, because I'm small potatoes, you know. At our height, I think we were producing maybe 10,000 towel blanks at a time, which to a small business, that is a huge number. But ironically enough, the stitcher that we've worked with for the last 7 years, he actually kind of fired me, for lack of a better word, earlier this year because my volume wasn't high enough for him anymore. He wanted me to produce like 1,000 a week to be able to stay on as a client for him. And that just wasn't realistic for me, even now. So it's, I don't know, even if you can find them, getting them to work with you is a complete other story. So it is a lot of hand holding and definitely management of people and Googling.
Yeah, reaching the end of Google. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that's why it's so difficult for business owners starting out to even go down that route, because there's no way anyone's gonna be able to produce 1,000, starting off with 1,000. Like that's just, it's really difficult to start with that. So I just commend you for being able to take that route and make it happen. And golly, that's just like a whole nother bear. So goodness gracious. But let's go kind of back to the beginning of your story a little bit and talking more about the National Stationery Show and how you were able to start off with wholesale and then talk about more how you manage retail and wholesale at the same time. So when did you begin to fall more into the retail side? Because you started out with wholesale, which is backwards usually.
Yeah. So I didn't add like a retail like e-commerce or anything until I think about 2 years later. So we launched in May of 2012. I don't think we had retail on our website until the end of 2014. I really just wanted to focus on doing wholesale and doing it well. That was enough for me at the time. And I didn't want to have an Etsy shop. I was very like anti-Etsy, which is so weird for a maker. I know like they were the champions of makers and small businesses back in the day. I know there's been a bit of a shift with that as of late, but I didn't want to just throw my products up on somebody else's site and call it a day. I wanted to keep control of that. Maybe that says something about my personality a little bit. So I waited until I could have my own beautiful branded e-commerce site. And that's what we did. The online retail space has never been a super big part of the money that I make. It is just kind of there, but it's still, I think, important to have in this day and age. We have done things like, retail markets and that kind of stuff. But honestly, anybody that's done those knows how exhausting they are. Honestly, I think retail shows are way harder than wholesale shows, like no joke, because you have to bring all that extra product because you're actually trying to sell it and somebody walks away with it. Whereas wholesale, you just need one of everything, which is kind of nice. So it's definitely a different take on things. We've been fortunate in that we got to do a couple of larger retail shows. So I've done Magnolia Market Celebration a couple times. which is like a 3-day event with thousands of people.
Isn't that actually happening like right now, I think? Celebration.
Yeah, I think it starts
like this weekend.
Thursday.
I've seen people like traveling down there, so that's just like funny timing.
So, it's interesting. I don't know. I guess I'm a brat and I just don't want to do them anymore.
I've never done a wholesale show, but I have done retail things. Nothing as big as Celebration at Magnolia, but every time I do, I mean, I don't do them anymore at all because you're right. Bringing all that product, it's such a pain. And then just trying to, I don't know, it's just a lot to manage. I'd rather do a wholesale show, not quite at that level yet to take on the NSS, but one of these days, because I'm kind of the person who's like, I'm going to do it right. Like I'm not going to halfway do it. So, so I'm kind of,
I feel you completely on that.
So I love how you just went all in from the get-go. Like that is so encouraging to me. So are you still showing at the National Stationery Show every year? Has that, or have you changed your strategy with that at all?
We have definitely changed things up a little bit. So we went back to the Stationery Show 4 years in a row. So we did it 2012, 13, 14, and 15. We started doing New York Now, which is the gift show, also at the Javits Center in New York. We started doing that in the fall of 14. So in 15, we did 3 wholesale shows in New York, which was enough to like do me in. It doesn't sound like that much, like, 3 shows over the course of a year. No, it was awful.
No, that sounds like a lot. That sounds absolutely crazy from what I know.
I have friends that will do like 6 shows every 6 months, like wholesale shows. I'm like, how are you standing? Like, honestly, I don't get that. But so we only did that, I think in 2015. And then we didn't go back to the Stationery Show the next year. So we only did New York Now twice in 16. And then in 2017, we just did the winter show at New York Now. And then we took a break because I thought I was going to be moving that summer. So we decided to not do a show, and then life happens and I ended up not moving until the next year. So I did the winter show again in 2018 and it was awful. So like there was shows for me were kind of like this steady, we always made the same amount. It felt like no matter how much money we put into it. So we kind of started seeing this decline happening in 2015, and that just kind of kept continuing. So, fewer buyers were at these shows, and it's just so expensive to be there. You're going to spend like minimum $10,000 to $15,000 just to be there. So it's a huge investment for your business. And if you're not making that return on investment, it's kind of hard to justify going back again and again and again. So we just did the one in 2018, and then we didn't go summer because I was opening the brick and mortar. And then in 2019, so this year we decided, let's go try Atlanta because we've heard really good things. And with our line being a little more Southern, like you would think the people of Atlanta and those traveling to Atlanta would get it.
Right.
It was abysmal.
Oh my gosh.
Awful. For me, I have friends that did it, same time frame, and they're like, no, it's the best show I've ever had. But for me, it was literally the worst show I'd ever had. So that was kind of hard. But, it's hard when you're trying to judge things because somebody might tell you, it's the best show I've ever had, but their best show might be the equivalent of my worst show, unless they're willing to actually talk numbers with you. So it's just a lot. It did not go very well for us. So we kind of had to take a step back and say, okay, what's really going on here? Is it the line that people aren't responding to? Is it pricing? Like, why do they just not like me? Like go through the whole range of emotions for sure. But we, for right now, have taken a step back and don't have any plans to do any more wholesale shows at this time.
That's so fascinating. I've definitely seen the shift with shows the past few years. They just seem to be kind of, I don't know, just kind of dwindling a little bit, and people aren't as excited as much, it seems like. So it's really interesting that you're taking a step back in 2020. Of course, you've had like this foundation of going, so I feel like you've already established yourself there. But for someone who is new and starting out, would you recommend them going to one of the shows, or would you just say, no, you can do without it?
I mean, honestly, I think it just depends on what it is you want and your goals for your business. I think there is definitely still a place for shows. And I'm sad that we're not going. Honestly, I love them.
Yeah.
But for us, the return on investment is not there. I think for somebody just getting started, it could be, because if you don't really have any background, anything you get is great. I think, that's one reason we felt like our first show was so good, is because we went into it with literally zero expectations and we walked away with our minds blown. So I think it just depends on what your goals are. It's kind of hard to like dip your toe into the wholesale market. I feel like a lot of it is just so much of outreach and follow up and, not hearing back from stores. Like there's just so much that goes into it. So I feel like a trade show can be a great springboard for your business when you're getting started.
Oh, along those same lines, this isn't one of our questions, but I was wondering, do you use Fair, the wholesale platform, at all?
I do. They, got a bad rap in the beginning with a lot of makers just because of the way they got started. Mm-hmm. But I think they've really taken to heart a lot of the feedback that they've gotten, and they've improved the platform. It's also just kind of hard to compete with the incentives that they can offer stores.
Right.
So I mean, they've got venture capital money behind them, which good for them. But as makers, it's really hard to compete with that. So it's kind of like, if you can't beat them, join them sort of thing. So we are on it both as a maker and as a shop. So I kind of, I get to see both sides of it. But yeah, it's, that has taken a good percentage of orders. I think for me, Fair more replaced the use of rep groups than it did going to shows.
Yeah, the outreach. I've gotten so many new accounts just from being on there that I would never, I don't have time. I don't have a team, so I don't have time to reach out. So it's been really great in that regard. So it's really cool to hear that you're using it as well. And hopefully they continue to make improvements like searching and tagging things. But
yeah, I mean, as anything on the internet is, where it's all algorithm based, it seems a little unfair sometimes. I find it hysterical that as a store that's on there, I have never been shown my own line.
That's hilarious.
And I would say that it's because they're so smart that they know it's my line, and so they're not going to show it to me, but I'm sure that's not the case. So I just find it really funny.
Oh my gosh. So with your retail store, it's not just your product. You have other, I want to come visit. You have other stores, lines as well.
Yes. So the shop, we say, is about 50% our line and then 50% other makers. I don't know that we've ever actually done the math there, because I don't really want to try to figure it out. But it feels about like that, I would say. It's, we probably only carry maybe 20 to 30 lines outside of our own at a time. Crap. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Literally, I only have a landline, so I can get spam calls all the time at the shop.
Yes. It's always fun.
I started blocking all of the robocalls that we would get, and it was always your Google listing is what, I don't know. And so I started blocking them. They started calling from Canadian numbers.
Oh my gosh. What? Have you ever gotten a number from your actual number? Because I get those sometimes, myself calling myself. It's very weird.
I've gotten it on my cell phone, not ever on the shop phone yet. The worst one I ever had was somebody called and said that they were the local electric company and that my power was about to be shut off because I hadn't paid my bill. And it sounded legit. I was panicked about it. But I was like, I know, I just paid that. What the heck? So I took the guy's information down because I was like, I don't know. And I Googled the phone number that called, and it came up as CPS, which is the local utilities company. I'm like, okay, what the heck? So I called CPS and was like, hey, I just got a call and I was told my bill's overdue. Can you check this? And she's like, no, you're fine. She was like, honestly, this has happened before. It's a known scam thing. They can put in whatever number they want and call. It's just crazy.
That is insane. People are bonkers.
Well, I think their assumption is you're going to give them a credit card number over the phone to pay the bill to like fix the
gosh.
That was the one time I was like, holy crap, what do I do?
Oh man, one of them got me real quick before we get back when we applied for our LLC for our business, and I got this very official letter that looked like it was from the state of Florida that I needed to pay $60 for this certificate thing, and I was like, oh my god, I don't want to like mess up everything. So they totally got me. But you know what?
I would probably get got with that too. Yeah. We had one recently that said, oh, my trademark was expiring.
Oh,
and like that,
gosh.
You don't want that. You don't want to let that stuff lapse. And it had gone to my old address. So my mom had actually gotten it and she like sent me a picture of it. So of course I'm just like scanning the picture really fast. And I was like, holy crap, I have to spend another $1,400 I don't have to renew this thing. And I was like, wait a minute, this is not legit.
This is not real.
I know, but it got me almost.
Almost.
Cammy was like, Elizabeth, please forgive me. Like, because this was like our LLC for Biz Birthday Bash. I was like, it's really okay. Like, I probably would have done the same.
Like, honestly, that's not that bad.
So, all right. Shall we dive back in, ladies?
Yeah, what were we discussing?
Well, I don't know, but let's talk about catalogs. So I'll just start over again. Okay, so Meg, I wanted to talk to you about your wholesale catalog and what that process looks like. I know there's a lot of questions from our listeners about wholesale catalogs and how to actually create one. So can you talk a little bit more about that and how often you are updating that?
So I am the weirdo that actually really enjoys making catalogs. Most people like hate the process.
Can I hire you?
Probably. I love it. I think if I didn't do what I did, I would do like publication design, so like magazines and that kind of thing. So I actually really enjoy catalog time. Usually for me, it's kind of happening right in the middle of holiday, which is the worst timing ever, but it's so I can get it printed and have it for the entire next year. Cause usually we were doing a show in January, so I needed to have fresh new catalogs. When we first got started, I was actually doing 2 catalog printings a year because we were doing kind of like a winter release and then a fall release. That's really expensive. So we kind of moved away from that to just the one a year at the beginning of the year. And then we do like an insert mid-year. I think catalogs definitely still have a place. I mean, obviously I'm a paper person. So if somebody wants to send me their line, I'm generally like, can you send like an actual catalog? I want to touch it and mark it up and all that kind of stuff. So I have like a big file cabinet full of like catalogs we've gotten over the years from other people. But I mean, I do understand that they're expensive. We're actually contemplating not doing one next year, which is kind of insane to me. But, you know, we got to be smart about how we spend our dollars and cents. And since most people these days are looking at our catalog online, it almost doesn't seem worth it to go through the expense of printing. Or maybe we figure out some kind of alternative way to just print a handful, whether we're doing that in-house or not. So I'm still figuring that out. But having the existence of one, yes, you still need that. To me, a line sheet is not enough as a store owner. Like I want more. I want to see pictures and, you know, how it's styled and how it works with the other things that you make. And I don't know, I'm clearly a visual person. I think most of us are when we're owning stores or having product lines. So yes, it is wildly important, even if it's only going to live, you know, as a link on your website or an issue thing. You definitely still need to do it for sure.
So as from a buyer and a retailer perspective, do you send samples to stores, and are you getting samples? Do you enjoy getting samples of other lines?
I do, as long as it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, as a store owner, I think what I can say to anybody that's like considering like sending out a pitch to a store they haven't worked with before, like do your homework. I can't tell you how many times I've been pitched like Canadian lines or international lines. And I'm like, guys, my store's made in the US. Like,
guys,
sorry. I know it's just, but like literally like 2 seconds of like research would have told you that.
Yeah.
And so you're not wasting your time and money and you're not wasting my time. So like, just be smart, like do your homework. Plus a lot of stores will have submission processes that they want you to follow. So whether that's, specifically an email address or whatever, like, it's different for every store. So I know it's a lot to keep up with, but if you take the time to do it, it's going to show to that store owner. So you're going to probably be more successful in the end by just taking that little bit of time. So I'm rambling and now I have no idea even what the question was.
Okay, just carry on rambling.
I do like samples if it makes sense. I think, maybe you start with an email introduction and say, hey, I'd love to send you a few samples if you're interested. If they don't respond to you, they're probably not interested. Why would you waste your time and money sending samples that you're not going to get back and that they're probably not going to order from? Like, be smart. Like, don't waste your money if you don't have to.
Yeah, absolutely agree on that one. I think Cami and I both relate that just like the lack of people taking the time to do research for anything is a huge problem in our age, which is so funny considering that everything is like literally at the tip of our fingers, because we'll get questions for things that we have either already put on our website a million times or on Instagram or whatever. Like something that we're like, you could find this in just a second if you took a time to look for it. So
I tell my husband that all the time.
Yeah, all the time. It can be like really frustrating. But I wanted to ask, as we kind of are starting to like wrap up our time together, what's the first store you ever went into and you like saw your product in person? Because obviously you got these like 50 wholesale orders from the National Stationery show that first time you went. So when was like the first time you walked somewhere and got to pick up one of your cards?
So there's actually a store in Savannah called Shop SCAD, and it is the kind of gift shop, I guess you could say, for the university. So since SCAD is the Savannah College of Art and Design, which is where I went. But the only way you can get your work in that store is if you are a current student, faculty, or alumni.
Okay.
So I actually did go meet with the general manager of Shop SCAD before I went to the stationery show. So I think I went and saw her like 2 weeks before I left. And I went to kind of pitch the line, one, to just get comfortable doing that in front of people. Mm-hmm. But it also kind of felt a little bit like a safe space. Since, I didn't want to assume I was a shoo-in, but like kind of I thought that, which is probably terrible. They were actually going through this like huge renovation. So they weren't even open at the time. They weren't going to reopen, I think, for like 2 months. So I kind of felt like it was a good time to get my foot in the door. That way, when they did reopen, if they wanted to have like a fun display of my product, they could. And the thing about Shop SCAD is it's a lot of fine art, since it is, there's a lot of drawing, painting, all that kind of stuff, classes. So to have someone like me who can reproduce things in a very tourist driven town, like the ability to have a card rack full of, student made cards or whatever, was really great because they could reorder them. So it felt like it would be a good partnership. So I went in and I pitched the line and I left my, fresh order form with her in my catalog, and I figured they'd pick up, maybe a handful of cards or something. And when she emailed me the order, she had literally just drawn a line through everything to say, like, literally, I want the entire line.
Oh my gosh.
So I think at the time it was like a $1,200 order, like that encompassed everything in my line. And I was just ecstatic. So that was technically my first order, just in general, and really the first place I was able to see it because I was right there local. But it was kind of funny. So when I went to the stationery show, I had sent out a mailer a couple weeks in advance because obviously it was my first time and I wanted to tell people who I was and get them to come to my booth. And Chelsea and Jamie from Sugar Paper, they were actually launching Wholesale the first time themselves that year, which is crazy to believe. But they had had a retail store for 10 years prior. So they were kind of there doing double duty, both showing in their own booth and then shopping for their store. So the show opened on a Sunday morning at like 9 a.m. and they were like in my booth at 9:01. And I was ecstatic because here was these amazing makers who like have had this beautiful store. They have all these celebrity clients and they were ready to place an order like right then and there. And that was literally how I kicked off my very first So it was like the most amazing high. And then the same thing happened the next year. They were the first people in my booth. So I felt like it was tradition at that point that like my show hadn't started until Chelsea and Jamie came and saw me. So it was pretty cool. That was, I think the first show that, or the first order that I actually wrote at a show was with sugar paper.
That's really cool.
Started with a bang.
That's how I felt too. I mean, I could have left, like packed it up right then, like, bye guys.
Yeah, we're good. We're good here.
I was going to mention too, I've gone through the list on your site to see where your work is featured close to me. And actually I lived like right off of Marietta Square here in Georgia for the first like 3.5 years of living here. And I just realized that Doodlebugs, it's like this little store on the square, carries your stuff. So I'm going to have to go in there and look at it sometime.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So with wholesale, like, and I'll be honest, I'm the worst about updating my website, like straight up the worst. So I may not be entirely accurate at this point.
Okay.
Like off the top of my head, I don't know the last time that they ordered. So
okay. The truth comes out.
I know, no promises. It's like always the bottom of my list is fixing that stuff. But it's also like, okay, is it a list of everybody that's ever ordered from you, or is it only like people that have ordered in the last 6 months? Like, these are the questions nobody has answers
No one has the answers. We don't know. We're all just doing our best here, okay?
Yeah.
I like the idea of it all encompassing of just like who's ordered, honestly, because it's called retailers, so they had your work at some point. Like,
yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I think we're kind of getting close to winding up here and finishing the episode. So we wanted to ask you our final question, which is, what's your number one tip for others who want to start a product-based business, if you can even choose just one?
I have two that I will give you, and I already said one, so I guess that doesn't count against me, we'll say. I said know your numbers. Like, I know that's like a horrible, boring answer, but it's so true. If you're going to run a product-based business, like, you need to make sure that you're actually making money. At the end of the day, yes, you love what you do and it's not work if you love it or whatever they say, but you still have to make money. It's a business. Remember that. So know your numbers, know literally to the penny how much it costs you to make that greeting card. And are you turning it around and selling it for enough? Are you considering your overhead? And even if you don't have any overhead right now, build it in, because one day you might. So it's just know your numbers. Like, can't say that enough times. But the other thing, and this actually relates back to my first experience at the stationery show, is it's a marathon, not a sprint. And if you guys know Katie Hunt from Proof to Product, like, you've probably heard her say that, which she kind of heard me say one time. But in saying that in the sense that it's so easy to get wrapped up and focused on, your next big event. So like for me, getting to the stationery show in 2012 was everything I was focused on. I was not worried about anything else. I was making that product line. I was getting to that show. Well, I didn't think about what happens after the show. It was great. I wrote 50 orders, but do you know how expensive it is to actually fill the inventory to like actually send out all those orders? So like, so it was 50 orders. I think we wrote $15,000 in sales orders, which was amazing. But when I got home and did the math, that was going to cost me $20,000 to actually produce all the inventory to fill those orders. In the sense that, like, obviously you're having to hit minimums when you're making anything. Mm-hmm. So I would have had inventory left over. It's not like I was losing $5,000, not like that.
Right.
But I literally spent every dime I had getting to that show. So how the heck was I going to produce $20,000 worth of inventory to actually fill these orders? Mm-hmm. So it's looking at the bigger picture is basically what I mean by that. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, yes, it's important to stay focused on the present and, reach those goals that you want to reach, but make sure that you're still keeping an eye on the big picture and looking forward.
That's amazing advice. And also crazy because, like, who would have thought, right? Like, it's so exciting. You're like, yes, I got $15,000 in orders. Oh, wait, I have to spend $20,000 to produce this. Like, you're right. Like that never would have crossed my mind either, you know, thinking about that type of situation. So thank you for leaving our listeners with that strong note, and just like to know your numbers is so important. And especially for me, as I'm considering whether or not I want to do this like product thing I've had in mind, like this was just very refreshing and good for me to hear all the information you shared. So thank you so much.
Happy to always share what's on my brain. I'm very much a believer that there's enough business to go around for all of us, and there's no reason to squirrel away the information. It's all out there. You're going to learn it eventually anyway. And if I can help you avoid some of the speed bumps that I've hit, I'm all for it.
Yes, we're big believers in that too. So thank you so much, Meg. This was so insightful. I learned so much. It's just been such a joy to get to talk to you and hear more about your story and your process. And holy moly, I'm so inspired. I'm going to go make a catalog right now.
Yeah, Cami has been needing to do this for a while now, so she
a long time.
She needs that kick in the butt. All right, so
I do.
Meg, I believe the places to find you are bellandunion.com, correct? Are you that on Instagram too?
We are Belle and Union Co. on Instagram.
Okay. And is there anywhere else that your business kind of like lives in the web, in the internet sphere that you want people to know about?
Website and Instagram are probably going to be the best places to find me. Instagram's really the only thing I update regularly. But if you're ever in San Antonio, come by and see us at our brick and mortar. We'd love to have you guys.
That sounds great. I will definitely make a note of that for sure.
All right, we're road tripping to San Antonio to go see Meg.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. And everyone, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you would like to leave us a rating and review on iTunes, we would greatly appreciate that. It helps us so much so we can continue to bring you guys all this great advice from other great makers. And yeah, thanks for joining us on today's episode.
Bye.
Bye. Hey y'all, we just wanted to give you the quick update on all the amazing sales we have coming for this weekend. Obviously, it's Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Small Biz Saturday, in a different order, obviously, but you know what we're saying. So we've got some amazing surprises for you guys, and we wanted to give you the down low.
I'm just over here kind of like cackling. I love it so much. It's very exciting and also very funny you said the amount of order, but everyone knows what we mean. Come on, guys, it's sales weekend. That's like we'll just refer to it as like the weekend of sales. But
and the weekend of mashed potatoes.
Oh yes, and Thanksgiving, obviously. For those of you in America, because our poor Canadian friends and otherwise are not, celebrating Thanksgiving. But we are getting way off track here because
just gave a disclaimer about Thanksgiving.
Shut up! I didn't use the word disclaimer.
I know. It was an implied disclaimer. We all know what it was.
I love them. So for our awesome sales weekend, we have every single day dedicated to a specific resource that we offer because it was too hard to pick just one to put on sale. Because for a while we're like, okay, we'll take a poll, we'll put one thing on sale. But no, you guys, we are putting all the things on sales, but they have specific days. Starting with Black Friday, the stationery contract will be on sale. Our awesome custom stationery contract has been a huge crowd pleaser this year. And I wish I knew off the top of my head how many people have bought it, but it's like getting up there.
Like everyone. But also, side note, the custom stationery contract is also going to be going up to $297 in 2020. So you might want to get in on this Black Friday deal because you'll save $20 off automatically. No coupon needed. Just that day, it is all on sale, $20 off. So it's going to be $207. And it's going up to $297 in 2020. So it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's literally a no-brainer. If you've had an eye on this resource, you need to get it on Black Friday. And it will be automatically discounted if you go to our website. No coupon needed, which is really nice for you guys. But we are of the opinion and the mindset that the more people invest in something, the more value it has, which is why the price is going up, because it deserves a little price raise there. But moving on to Small Biz Saturday, our Business Sense for Creatives bundle will be discounted $30, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah. So it's normally $97 and it'll only be $67. This is also an automatic discount. And the creative, what am I saying? Business Sense for Creatives. The Business Sense for Creatives is basically our 2018 webinars that we did. It was all about pricing, processes, and people, which is like how to find the right client. So it's honestly like such of a great foundational tool for like a mini Stationer Summit. Honestly, you guys, it's kind of what it is, for getting your pricing in check, like getting your processes set up for your stationery business, and how to actually find clients who will love and appreciate you. And we go all in on this. It also comes with 3 PDF party favors, which are just our fancy word for downloads. So you get an SEO cheat sheet, our pricing FAQs, which a lot of attendees have said the pricing FAQs PDF is worth the amount of the whole bundle itself. And then what is the other one we give? Oh, a little mini vendor guide. So if you're not a part of the A to Z directory, you just need a little mini vendor guide. We have that included as well. It's like a whole little bundle of awesomeness.
I know. I kind of feel like this is our like cheat resource, quote unquote, where you can get like a little bit of like everything without paying the full price of each thing. So like $67 for this is a total steal. We have people who still watch these videos. They're from fall of 2018 who will still go back and watch them over and over. And I think what you said earlier kind of like it hits it kind of on the head, because if you missed the Stationers Summit this year and you had major like regrets for not buying it,
and
and the Business Sense for Creatives is kind of the next best thing, because we're still offering some like similar value within our sessions of what gets covered in the summit, just on like a smaller scale and just the 2 of us. But we have so much fun, and
it's really fun.
Yeah, the PDF downloads are awesome too. So then Sunday, we're giving you guys a little breather. But the important thing is that you will receive an email later in the day on Sunday outlining the important coupons you need to have for Monday, because on Monday, the A to Z directory is going on sale, which is a huge freaking deal.
Yeah. Okay. So A to Z directory on sale on Monday. But yeah, like she was saying, Sunday is when you get like the keys to unlock all the goodness. So you really have to be on our email list. So to get on our email list, just go to bizbirthdaybash.com and hit freebie, and you'll get our free download, and you can get on our email list so you can get all the codes you need to save, because there's different ones. It's kind of like a sneaky little Easter egg hunt, you guys. Okay. So except that they're coming to your email. So not really, but y'all know what I'm saying. Okay. It's going to be awesome. So A to Z directory on sale. You might want to wake up early that day. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep. And the codes are going to be good for your first year of the membership only, just something to keep in mind. And they're kind of these like sneaky, like tiered coupons, like only a certain amount of uses for a certain amount. It's super vague, but like we said, go to bizbirthdaybash.com and click the freebie tab to get that free download, to get on our email list. And I mean, the free download itself is awesome. People freaking love that thing. It's our top 100 tips and tricks for like creative business owners or something like that. We can never remember the names of all our things, clearly.
I have no idea what any of our stuff is called, clearly, except for the A to Z directory. I've butchered everything. I can't even get the days of the week in the right order. So
Tammy doesn't even go here, y'all.
I don't even go here. She doesn't even go here.
Anyhow, we are super excited about all these sales for our favorite resources, aka all our resources,
and
guys.
For our favorite people, and that's you guys.
Woo! So make sure last time you're on the email list, and if you're following us on Instagram at BizBirthdayBash and our personal accounts as well, we're definitely going to be pushing reminders over there as well. But the email list is where it's at, because you get that reminder right away to make sure that you don't forget to cash out on these things on the day they're happening. And then we also have Biz Bash Tuesday coming up, but that's kind of like our secret thing. That's like December 3rd, I think. Yep.
Yes, December 3rd, Biz Bash Tuesday. Gonna be lit, fam. Or is that something cool to say? Gonna be lit, fam. It's gonna be great. But anyway, we hope you guys have an awesome week and have a great Thanksgiving, and we will see you in your inbox on Friday.
All right. Bye-bye.
That was my turkey.